Hello, everybody, and welcome back once again to another amazing session that is forming part of our virtual campaign called A Tree of Knowledge. And it's exactly what the name says. We are doing this in aid of commemorating Arbor Week, and we're just creating a space to share some knowledge, share some insight, and just let you guys in on a little bit of a secret or two in just what it is like being a professional, a specialist, being in the field of the environment and the water sector as well. And today I'm joined by a very amazing and incredible woman that I've had the privilege of working with on quite a few occasions, but we're going to get into that a little bit later. So today we have Danelle Courtney, who is an environmental officer at Garden Cities and a team coordinator for the Mosselbank River Conservation Team. Danelle, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
I love your earrings.
Thank you.
I say that because I own a pair, guys, so I'm just being a little bit modest on that note. But now, do you mind just taking us a bit through what is MRCT, what's the objective, and just some of the work that you are doing as part of the Mosselbank River Conservation Team?
It is quite a mouthful. That's why we just say MRCT because it's so much easier. So the MRCT was kind of formed from this idea from Garden Cities that we had to, from our perspective, a condition of approval from our development Greenville, which is in Santa Cruz side, that we have to look after and rehabilitate the eastern tributary of the Mosselbank River that bisects through the community, but also other associated wetlands and a terrestrial corridor. So obviously it's easy to, do the rehabilitation work, but what comes after? It's just going to stand there, we're just going to look after it, and that's where the idea of the Mosselbank River Conservation Team stemmed from. And they were formed in 2017. We first started, I think it was just 5 members, and we identified a few team leaders in the community, and we were like, well, do you like the environment? Do you have a bit of a passion? Do you think it's something you want to do? And then we just tested it. So there's 2 objectives for the Mosselbank River Conservation Team. The first is to maintain and restore the eastern tributary of the Mosselbank River, through obviously to the active restoration and a little bit passive, where we just leave certain areas, a bit of an experiment here and there. And through that, we've done some planting, we are weeding, also, all the process is part of rehabilitation. Yeah. So that is the one thing, I would say that's the easy part, because we know what to do. It's a process, we've got plants, we put it in, we water them, we look after them, we take the weeds out. The second part is the education part. So this is where the team really needs to put everything together. We need to go into the community and we need to tell them, please don't steal our water lilies.
Yeah.
Please don't steal our daisies. Please don't dump. Please don't swim in the river. Those are the issues that we sit with at the Mosselbank River. And that's the biggest part of the MRCT, is to do that education, to engage with the community, getting new stakeholders, and working with local businesses, community-based organizations, schools, ECDs, local government, and bring all those people together and let them listen to the community. Let them hear what the issues are. Because it's very easy to read out of the book and this is the state environmental issues that we find. But when you go to the community, they're going to tell you, they're talking about the overflow stormwater drain that's affecting them. Why is the stormwater drain or the sewage drain overflowing? Because it's blocked by people dumping oil and things like that. So those are the issues that they want people to listen to. So yeah, that is the 2 main objectives. And obviously we want to keep on building the team in terms of the practical, doing the rehabilitation, but also building the team with resources and knowledge and expertise to take this education program beyond to just me or Garden Cities being in the community.
Yeah, and some of you might have seen very recently on my social media, I've actually joined the MRCT team last week, Saturday, for a community cleanup. And it's I'm someone, and I've mentioned this because I've had Danelle on my very first virtual campaign, which was Plastic Free July. Um, and I made a personal statement for myself. I said that I work throughout the Western Cape. So I've been to every little village, every town, every community within the borders of the Western Cape. And
Mm.
I've worked a few times in Pacifical, and I always had this sense and feeling like it's a forgotten community, even just getting to Pacifical. You sometimes, when I drive past it, I have to remind myself that there's a community there. There are people there. So in a community like that, now, how do you guys just make it possible and also just continue to keep the community on board with such big environmental, not only projects, but objectives for protecting the resources in the community?
It's a massive job. It's definitely not easy. Um, because like you said, it's like a forgotten little community out there where it's actually part of Durbanville and it's not supposed to be forgotten about. And but it's worlds apart.
Most definitely.
Durbanville is totally different from Pasantikral and has got major issues, not just when it comes to environmental things or environmental justice and things like that, social issues. And this is where it's like all layers, layers, layers. You can't just see this separate. So for us, like it's hard to focus on illegal dumping when people don't have food, the children are walking without shoes, people are worried about housing, about where they're going to get water, about their sanitation. So I mean, for us, it's really tricky. I mean, I've been threatened with a knife before for going to somebody that was illegal dumping, and they're like, "But how am I supposed to get wood?" And I dump over there, not near the river. So it's really about education opportunities and seizing the moment. So that's one of the key things I do is I don't scold, although I want to get angry and just yell at people. You have to create educational moments, especially for the people that you catch in the act. I mean, it happened on a Saturday. You were there, remember?
Yeah.
So he was standing there on his drum, looking at us, waiting for us to walk past, so that he can go dump where we just cleaned. And I was like, do you think it's fair for us to clean up your waste? I mean, we're doing this, it takes you 1 minute to throw everything out, but it takes us hours to clean.
Yeah.
And then I have to explain, do you know about the Mosselbank River? Do you know why we shouldn't dump there? Do you know where the waste go? And then I explain, all I need you to do is just come ask us for a bag at least. And then we can throw it in the bag and it makes our job so much easier. And we spend hours and hours just cleaning illegal dumping. Imagine what we can do with that time. Imagine that with time we can invest in all the community-based organizations, in the children. And now we're spending so much time cleaning and also money, the government spending so much money on illegal dumping, but we can use that money for environmental education or education in a broad sense, not just environmental, So yes, being visible and being present. So I remember when I had to do my honors, it was in Genadendal, near Greyton, and I did interviews. So this is where my passion for the social side and the environment, how does that connect, stemmed from. Yeah. So to get perceptions about honeybush and honeybush tea and alien invasives. So we did the interviews and all those things, and then from that I had to do a focus group. So I went to each home and I gave them a letter and I was like, please come, it's going to be this evening, and I prepared food and I had a hall and everything. It comes to the evening and one guy showed up that was from the community. I remember he was a Rasta. He was very passionate about the environment, and I was like, out of the 20 people you showed up, that's fine, we're going to do this interview. But I also had a community, he's like an activist, but also leader. He works for Santa Girl now too. And he told me, Danielle, you know how many organizations or people before you came here to do a study or promised them, I'm going to do a study for 2 years and we're going to have this amazing project afterwards, made promises and left. So the community are, I'm sorry, they're getting full of sharing information and giving all the information and giving ideas, but nothing comes from it. So being present and visible and being there long term is super important for people to buy into your project. Otherwise, people are just going to say, you're just another organization that's promising something, and then you leave. Yes. What else, what new can you bring to the table, kind of thing. So that's the one key thing for me. It's just being there.
Yeah, and I've watched so much of the work that you guys have been able to do. And I think when I look at you, especially as the team coordinator and just someone that really pushes this initiative, not only in her professional space, but as a person, a word that comes to mind is consistency. Which I think is so important, especially when we're working with our communities. I think that so often we forget that when we go into a community, we have this notion of, I'm going to go in to address a certain issue. But there are so many other interlinked issues in that community. There's poverty, there's unemployment, there's child abuse, there's gender-based violence, there's gangsterism, there's crime, and there's so much things that just adds on to the situation that community is faced with. So I think that by being consistent and also knowing how to listen to your community, and rather before coming with the approach of, this is my idea, this is the answer to it all, are some of the things that makes it easier to work with our communities. Because and I've seen this over time, Danielle, communities want to be heard and they want to be seen and they want to feel noticed. And when you give them that, you give them a sense of pride in taking up their space. And that is how you start that relationship with your communities.
That's what I appreciated from UWC. So they are nursing students, community health students, and they started to incorporate the environmental aspect of it. And the first thing of their project is they have to do a needs analysis. And, it's not what they want out of the project, it's what the community wants out of the project. And that is super important to do first. It's not to just go in with your aim, but you get the aim of the community and see how you can integrate it. And that's the quickest way you're going to get your community leaders and general community on board with your project, is to actually incorporate their ideas.
Definitely. And then, in your opinion, just in summary, do you think that enough is being done in terms of environmental awareness? And I ask this because you spend so much time on the ground in our communities, just driving the concept of environmental awareness.
It's like a yes/no thing for me. Why I say this? Because we've got so many amazing non-profit organizations doing amazing work, like MRCT, and today I learned of a new one, ESE. I don't know if you've heard of them before.
Yeah.
Yes, and I was like, how have I not heard of them before? And even Sandy and all those type of organizations. I mean, they're doing amazing work. And what I found frustrating is it feels like environmental challenges or environmental awareness education is always like an afterthought when it comes to budgeting and things like that. It's like, oh, we've got 10,000 rand left from the city budget. We can do that for awareness. And I mean, I think that's super unfair to just think it's like an afterthought. And do you know what happens is that it's a project that is for 3 months, and then what happens after that? I mean, like we had an amazing solid waste education program from City of Cape Town, and they were engaging. They even incorporated the MRCT. We did puppet shows. They were engaging at the taxi rank and all those things. And then what happens after a few weeks? It dies out. And then again, where's the consistency in that? We need constant engaging, constant people enforcing law and telling people what the consequences are for dumping or any type of environmental pollution. So yes, we can do amazing things are happening in this sphere, even if it's just private and I'm doing it at my own capacity on a Saturday. You know, more people need to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's not just up to the city of Cape Town or local government, or it's always the other people. No, it starts with you as well. You know, as a parent, what do you do with your children at home? You know, that's where it also starts. So I think it's definitely yes, no type of
Yeah.
question for me.
And just to latch on to the point that you said about there being so many different amazing people doing a lot of amazing things, you know, I've started this journey 2.5 years ago. And I sort of always had this concept of saying to myself that there's enough light for all of us to shine. We all want to be influential. We all want to be remembered for the stand that we take and to build this legacy. But at the same time, we need to support one another because we have the same objective. We have the same thing in mind. We are fighting for the same thing. So I personally love supporting other people, other NGOs, campaigns and projects, even if it's just going for 15 minutes to a beach cleanup and running to the next one. I try to do that as often as I can, because as much as I'm pushing my agenda, it's also good to support those that's pushing the same thing.
Completely agree. Completely agree. And that comes to actually one of the last things that I want to mention is even in when you do a community-based project, it's not about always getting the other organizations to support you, but you need to support the other organizations like the youth organizations, like the ECDs, like the gender-based violence organizations. You know, how it doesn't even have to be in the environmental sector. If you show support to them, they'll show support to your program. So very important point that you made.
And then obviously we are supporting Arbor Month, National Arbor Month, which you are one of the very fortunate ones to know how dear and close that is to my heart. I know you guys are also doing a few activities just to commemorate Arbor Day itself. So just in your opinion, like what is the importance and the significance in linking environmental education with activities such as tree planting?
It's an amazing opportunity. You know me, I brought show at Show and Tell. So last year we had over months on the river. We got some trees donated, and then we invited a local creche, One Life, and they had 120 kids.
Wow.
So we invited them, and I told the team, okay, listen, this is where I stayed back, and now you're gonna have to tell the kids about the trees. So I made a simple diagram.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can show you. It shows a tree and people sitting under it and some fruits and, you know, just explaining the process and all those things. This picture speaks a million words, basically. Yeah. There's a lot of things that we can explain. So we showed this to the kids, and then I told them, I asked them, do you see any trees here? And then they show everywhere, oh, the trees are everywhere. And I'm like, yes, of course, the trees are everywhere. And let's start with this process. So it's easy. We start with like identification of the different parts of the tree, the bark, the leaves, the roots. And then that's new words, you know? So you must think we're working with kids that are about 6 years old. And then
go down to their level.
Yes, exactly. So we can't be like, what do you call it? Carbon dioxide and oxygen, you know, you can't use any of those.
And alien invasive species.
Yes. I remember, sorry, this is a sidetrack. I remember doing my first ECD like interaction. It was a disaster because I wasn't able to use any like, how can I say, like I was using all these
technical terms,
words.
yeah.
And the teachers were looking at me like, what are you saying? And then I brought Elizabeth, the team leader. I was like, just come do a song, just come do a song. And then they were so excited. I was like, okay, now I really have to practice out you know. So yeah, so like I explained, like just like you grow, A
Yeah.
tree needs to grow. So what do you need to grow? You need water and food. And
Yeah.
just like that, the tree also needs water and food. And then we talk about, I'm saying soil quality, but we dumb it down. You know, we show them the soil and
Sure.
all the things that you can see, and the insects and all those type of things. And then we talk a bit about water quality, you know, but what a good water can really help the tree grow big. And then I talk about how important it is as a home, you know, it is a home for different animals, also provides food. And then you can talk about seasons. I mean, you can show the leaves. The leaves are different shapes. Then you
Yeah.
learn them, teach them about shapes. And you can teach them about colors. And then obviously I also tell them about, it's like lungs, you know, just like you breathe, the tree breathes. So, you know, and then I tell them it's good air and bad air. It's the easiest way to explain it. And then the most important, well, you know, when you talk about climate justice, and you can't tell 6-year-olds about climate
Yeah.
justice, we say, when you sit under the tree, how do you feel? Then you say, well, we feel cool. You know, it's
Yeah.
a nice climate, like microclimate, but I can't use that word. So it's, you know, so we say you cool. Imagine there, and then we say, imagine there was no trees here, you know, or like it would be hot. And then we try to bring in the concept of climate change, which has to be dumbed down very, very, you know, because I mean, climate change is a big word. It's a lot of things in one.
Yeah.
And all I just try to explain is that when we don't have trees, it's going to be too hot, and then we're going to be all uncomfortable. It's the easiest way. Or I say we won't be able to have food,
Yeah.
or anything like that. So trees are super important for education, and I'm so excited when we talk about it because it's the easiest way. It's visual. They can touch it, they can ask questions, and you can make so many connotations to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love
Definitely.
trees.
I was actually, I'm busy preparing for an interview that I'm having next week. And one of the questions that was listed was why, because they went to my social media and they've seen that every year, like last year, I planted 250 trees. And they always ask, and one of the questions that was asked is why I do it. And I actually came across a very beautiful quote that I want to share with you. And it's by Nelson Henderson that says, the true meaning of life is to plant trees under whose shade you do not expect to sit. And I think it's such a profound message that I'm actually going to print it and just put it up in my office and always look at it, because I think it summarizes it so beautifully. Because I think that with environmental education, one aspect of it is that, you know, we're advocating for something that is voiceless. So we are the voice of the environment, and we are doing it not only to prove a point for today, but we're doing it so that generations to come will have that constitutional right that says, you know, everybody has the right to a clean and safe environment. And it's a constitutional right of all South Africans.
I mean, that is what we're fighting for ultimately.
Definitely. And then, in your opinion, Danelle, I mean, you work with the river conservation, you focus on education, you focus on tree planting. The aspects of the environment, do you think that we should start separating these different aspects and deal with them in isolation so that we can systematically start bettering the conditions of that aspect? Or does the key solution lie in us integrating it and treating it as a whole?
For me, I think it depends on your goal of what what you want to achieve. Let's say, for example, it's like water pollution. It's one key aspect, and it's easy to find. You say you want to find the source of the water pollution. That's an easy solution for that specific aspect, right?
Yeah.
Environmental aspect. So that makes solutions easy if we know the specific pollution. But like everything else in South Africa, nothing is easy. Everything is complicated and integrated. For example, like illegal dumping. Okay, so yes, when you walk by, you see illegal dumping, but behind that, it is a massive process. It is seepage to the soil, so it's soil pollution. It's water pollution because it
Groundwater.
is seeped into
Yeah.
the groundwater and into the rivers. Then it's disease and viruses and needles and all
Yeah.
those type of things. So it's a human health aspect problem as well.
Yeah.
And then obviously the burning of the waste is air pollution. So now you have already 4 different environmental aspects in one problem.
Yeah.
So then it's about the fact of we can't, or we're finding a solution for one thing because that means it's just illegal dumping. And then you have to track back what's causing illegal dumping. People need to get resources to like wood to get warm, or they have too much waste because they've got a family of 8 people living on one plot.
Yeah.
You don't have enough bins. So it really depends on what your goal is. Like, is it easy, like water pollution is one aspect, it's getting the source and finding out what the source is and how to stop it, or is it illegal dumping where it's like layers and layers of social inequalities, water pollution, soil pollution. So I think it really depends. For me, I think you have to think about everything. You can't just keep things in isolation.
Yeah. And I think it's so important for us to realize that as much as our service providers and our water services authorities, who is our government, has a role to play, society and as individuals and as humanity, we have a role to play as well. And that is such a key element to just unfolding, you know, the solutions that we want for environmental protection. I mean, as a country, we have signed an agreement to say by 2030, we are committed to the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. And if the global pandemic has taught me as an activist anything, is that as a globe, we are not ready to stand up in 2030 and say that all those countries that have signed this agreement, we have done it. You know, we are still such a long way of completely achieving those 17 goals, which speaks to every single aspect that you've just covered now. So yeah, we still have so much work to do. And then the last question to just summarize the conversation is, what are some of the mechanisms that you can apply to ensure commitment to environmental campaigns? And I ask this because, once again, you are a team coordinator and a leader of a very fundamental, dynamic project happening in Vasantaklau.
If you don't mind, this is actually a very important question for me. So I wrote a few things there that I feel like is important for, especially for people that want to do this out of their own capacity. Remember, you don't need a fancy organization to start a cleanup. But if you want to start a community-based project, there's a few things that is really important that I've learned. Like, this is not from a book or anything, it's what I've picked up. So firstly, you need to definitely establish ownership. And if people don't care about the environment,
accountability is so important.
That doesn't help. So you need to really identify the community leaders, or not even community leaders, the youth, the children who's got a passion for the environment or wants to do something, or even if it's not about the cleanup but about the social aspect. If they want to come together, identify them and give them that ownership and that power and be like, you are responsible for admin, you're responsible for the finances, you're responsible for the next cleanup, you're responsible for the bags. That tells them, okay, somebody's giving me some responsibility and I want to prove myself. And this is so incredibly sad that I find with the community is nobody's putting trust in them, so that putting trust that they can actually make a difference. Nobody's encouraging them to tell them, you are an amazing leader, you can do this without me. Remember, we had a conversation where I had to do that handover phase with the team, because ultimately it's their responsibility to look after this program when I'm not there, or when some of the other team members move away, somebody else needs to take that position over. So super important to build capacity within those people that you've identified. So giving them the training, like first aid, snake handling, leadership, giving them a branded t-shirt. I mean, it speaks so much, because it means like, I belong to this, I belong. You know, and that's
that
so
sense
important.
of belonging is so important.
Definitely, because that's what when I think about nothing about the environment, but the kids, I'm thinking, I want to tell them, you belong here. You don't have to go to a gang. You don't have
Yeah,
to.
definitely.
You are important to us, and we love you, and we respect you enough to include you into everything that we do. You know, so
Definitely.
that's super important. Okay, and then the other thing is obviously having regular meetings with those people you've identified, because I mean, sometimes we lose track about what is important.
Yeah.
Even if it's just informal, and then chatting to them and asking once again, because needs change, you know? Maybe it's not illegal dumping that's the issue anymore, and we have to focus more on water pollution of the river. And then we have to talk about how do we include that in our project or in our education program. And then, like I was once again, continuously engaging with your community-based organizations. So we've got a WhatsApp group with all the organizations, and we share events, we share ideas, and sometimes frustrations.
There's
So
a
that's because that's also important. Also, so you can also engage via workshops, and this is super important because then you can get that key group. So, like for example, I had a workshop with the soup kitchens that were kind of that arise from this pandemic, and they were interested in recycling. So there's a way you can tap into in some education and then
definitely.
doing something with the ECT centers
Yeah.
or with the youth organizations,
Yeah.
which I'm
So.
still struggling with, but we'll get there.
But Danelle,
Yeah.
I must say thank you so much for just taking the time to share some of your thoughts and views and just giving us some insight. And that's just the objective of this virtual campaign, is to allow people to freely access this kind of information. There can be someone sitting there that is ready and in a position to be a team leader, to start leading a campaign, but it's just that little bit of a nudge, that little bit of encouragement. So thank you so much for sharing your time and your thoughts with us. And I definitely look forward to many, many more campaigns with you guys.
I totally agree. And thank you for doing the series though, and for, for kind of inspiring the rest of us to do this, to keep on going.